still alive? Each of these questions can be answered, but the last one, the question that an old photograph so often raises, might be answered first. The age of the photograph, usually revealed by the clothing, may settle the survival issue. We may guess at a decade: skirt length, hats, the presence or absence of gloves. These may be clues enough. And, the question of survival having been settled, we may turn our thoughts to how the people in the photograph met their end. In this case, one of the women was killed in a traffic accident in Bristol. Another died in 1956 of rapidly progressing septicemia. The third lived to see the fall of the Berlin Wall. The man died at 62, having fallen overboard in a yachting accident on the Solent. A spinnaker, badly handled, had folded in upon itself, wrapping him in its embrace and eventually pushing him off the deck into the sea. He was a strong swimmer, but it is thought that cold water shock took its toll. None of these siblings did anything out of the ordinary with their lives. People may be remembered by the things they made, or the things they made happen, perhaps by their sayings, their acts of creation, however modest. None of these four left anything much behind them. Obscurity is quick and tactful. It keeps a straight face if it overhears our hopes of being remembered, but it knows better. So, in a sense, it was as if these four had never existed. Some lives are like that. They leave little trace, as unrecorded as were those countless lives led before writing and photography gave some degree of permanence to our human experience. He was called Thomas Sanderson, and his sisters were Annette, Flora, and Stephanie. Thomas was 2 years older than Annette, who was the senior of the sisters, in turn 2 years the senior of Flora, who was born 2 years before Stephanie. "We are a perfectly spaced family," Annette was fond of saying, "even if our poor brother is somewhat outnumbered by his sisters." "I don't mind that at all," said Thomas. "In fact, I consider myself lucky to have 3 sisters. That is, great good fortune in this life." "It's very nice of you to say that," said Flora. "And we're very fortunate to have such a dear brother." They are pictured here in England, where they lived for most of their lives. Their early childhood, though, had been spent in Penang, in what was then the Straits Settlements. Their father, Robert, the head of a port warehousing firm in Georgetown, also owned a small rubber estate in one of the neighbouring Malayan states. He had no taste for the jungle, though, and left the management of the estate to a taciturn Glaswegian who had 5 children by a Malay woman. Robert's wife, Francie, disliked the Glaswegian, being scandalized by his casual fathering of his brood of children. None of the children had been brought up to speak English. None wore shoes, and the 2 small boys amongst them had long hair that their mother lovingly tied in a ponytail. They were, without exception, very happy in their freedom, and indifferent to Francie's frosty disapproval on the rare occasions that she visited the estate with her husband. Francie disapproved of many things. Like many women in colonial society, she was acutely aware of her status, which by the nature of things at the time was entirely dependent on her husband's position. Robert was well off and had been in Georgetown for a long time, unlike some of the more recent arrivals whom the older planters and traders looked down upon. He was on the committee of the local Chamber of Commerce, which gave him a certain amount of clout, and which ensured invitations to official functions, even if he and Francie were rarely placed at the top table at a government dinner. He'd also been the vice-chairman of the club for a double term of office, and that again conferred some standing. But for most purposes he was outranked by senior government officers, and more significantly, perhaps had an air about him that aroused the suspicions of the more snobbish. These people were discreet about it,